Time for bed. Welcome, my fellow traveler. Here's a glass of water for you. Tonight, it's the new episode of the Bedtime Story. A journey to find light. So, lay down, close your eyes, and let's get started. Episode 3. The Fire of the Dark Forest. After a lovely and peaceful night rest in the village, Christopher continued his adventure the next day. Leaving the basin behind, he entered a path where the trees pressed closer, the branches weaving overhead into a canopy so dense that the last trace of sky was swallowed one by one. He could still feel the two artifacts, the golden ear and the crystal heart, pulsing stronger bit by bit as he walked forward, like two small compasses pointing him into a darkness that grows thicker with every step. Deep into the woods, the darkness changed. Not deeper, not darker, but different. As if the world around him was being erased piece by piece. First, the sky vanished entirely. Then, the trees thinned and dissolved, the trunks fading like ink washed from paper, until he was standing in a void. No ground beneath his feet. Or rather, the ground was still there, but it had lost all texture, all detail. Every crack and pebble and grain of dirt smoothed away until it felt like walking on nothing at all. No horizon, no walls, no wind, no sound. The darkness was absolute and directionless, pressing in from everywhere and nowhere. And for the first time since entering this world, Christopher felt something worse than fear. Disorientation. The kind that seeps into your bones and makes you forget which way is up and which way is down. If without gravity, it would be like drowning in the deep sea. He stood still, breathing into nothing, and the two artifacts pulsed against his chest, making him feel even more anxious. Oh, gotta at least try one direction, Christopher said to himself with an encouraging tone. So he started walking again, not towards anything, just forward, one step at a time, into the void. As if walking in space. No sound, no echoes, no sense of time flow. Christopher looked around and kept trying to seek anything with a different color. And then he saw it. A faint glow, no bigger than a firefly, drifting somewhere ahead in the void, flicking softly like a candle flame caught in a breath of wind. Christopher's heart seized. He hadn't seen light in what felt like, forever. Without thinking, he lifted his legs and ran on full force to the sole spot of light. The glow brightened as he approached, stretching and reshaping itself until it wasn't a firefly anymore but something larger and recognizable. Seeing what was in front, Christopher stopped in his tracks and gasped. Bathed in soft golden light, there were two figures he knew better than anyone in the world. His parents. They looked exactly as he remembered them. His mother's gentle eyes, father's quiet smile. It was the same old familiar thing that always brings warmth and a smile onto his face. Behind them, half visible in the glow, stood a door he recognized. The door of opportunity. The same one that had brought him here in the first place at the metro station. "Hey, darling, we're here to take you home." Mom spoke and Dad smiled. Christopher's throat tightened, tears running in his eyes. He hadn't seen them in so long, and here they are, right in front of him, real enough to touch, offering him the thing he wanted the most: a way home. He stepped toward them, reached for the door handle, and his mother's hand found his. Warm. Familiar. Exactly as it had always been. She said softly, "If you come back with us now, all you have to do is find a steady job. Something safe. Something reliable. And you can stay forever." The words hung in the air like honey, sweet and heavy, and Christopher felt himself leaning toward them, felt his hand tightening on the door handle. Part of him, the tired, exhausted part that had been carrying weight for years, wanted nothing more than to say yes. But something else stirred deeper inside him. A quiet resistance. Not loud, not dramatic, just a small voice whispered, "That's not what I want. Not really. A steady job, a safe life, a road of life that you can see the end from the beginning." Christopher's grip on the handle loosened, then let go. He stepped back and turned away from the light. His parents' face flickered just for a moment after seeing his reaction, looking confused. Christopher then ran. just ran, legs pumping, chest heaving, back into the dark where nothing waited but the sound of his own breathing and the two artifacts pulsing against his ribs. The dark swallowed him whole again, just the same directionless void, pressing against his skin from every angle. He stood there, catching his breath, hands on his knees, heart still hammering from the run, and for a moment, the only sound was the air moving in and out of his lungs. Then he saw another glow, brighter this time. Not one point of light, but several, drifting and clustering like a handful of fireflies approaching him. They grew as they drifted toward him, stretching, reshaping, until they weren't fireflies at all, but people. Young, laughing, vibrant people, wearing nice clothes, arms length, standing in the warm glow. They were Christopher's childhood friends. They were faces he hadn't seen in years, now beaming at him like no time had passed at all. They reached for him the way they used to, easily, naturally, like picking up a conversation that had never really ended. "Come back," they said, and their voices overlapped, warm and familiar, a chorus of welcome. "Hey, just come home. We will set you up, introduce you to someone nice, take you to all the best places and eat like kings. Like how we used to, you know? Together. Forever." The offer was intoxicating. Every word a hint of something sweet and addictive. Christopher felt the pull of it, the gravity of belonging, of being wanted, of never having to be alone or uncertain again. But even as the warmth washed over him, something wasn't right. He could see it now. A faint translucency at the edges of their smiles, a hollowness behind their laughter, and he realized these weren't his friends. They were only the shape of his friends. This wasn't home. This was nostalgia dressed up as a destination. A beautiful, glittering cage made of memories. He shook his head, and the faces also flickered. They knew Christopher was not falling for it. So he ran again, plunging back into the dark. More glows appeared, countless, blooming in the void like a field of fireflies caught in slow motion, each one drifting toward him with a different shape, a different promise. Those glows weaved scenes around Christopher. A high-paying job at a company, nice office, impressive title, money on the table, or a beautiful person who made Christopher's heart skip, smiling, standing close, reaching for his hand. And the pull was almost unbearable, almost enough to make him stop and stay. More and more, they kept coming, and each one reached for him with hands made of light. But this time, Christopher didn't stop. He didn't even slow down. The glows thickened around him, clustering, multiplying, until they formed a wave, a slow, luminous tide of illusions, rising on all sides, threatening to swallow him in a sea of things that almost mattered. And Christopher walked through it, not around, not away from, straight through, his eyes fixed on something ahead. The wave was gaining on him now, and he could feel it at his back, burning and heavy. The glow pressing against his shoulders like hands trying to turn him around, and his legs were screaming. However, Christopher did not stop. He eyed on something ahead and far, with dedication on his face. Those illusions turned to the direction where Christopher was staring, with a confusing look. A rock? That's where you're going off, sir? Christopher did not respond and continued running until he made it to the rock, which was covered in mud and moss. A pedestal, more precisely made of stone, ancient, worn by time, standing alone in the middle of nothing. On top of its surface, 3 holes carved into it deeply. Each hole was a different shape. An ear on the left, a heart on the right, and in the center, empty and waiting, the outline of a flame. Christopher's breath caught. He knew those shapes. He had been carrying 2 of them against his chest this entire time. Without hesitation, he pulled the golden ear from his pocket and pressed it into the left slot. And the stone hummed beneath his finger, a low vibration that traveled up through his arms and into his shoulder. Then, the crystal heart was plugged into the right slot, and the pedestal hummed again, louder and deeper this time. The ground beneath his feet trembled, and the wave of illusions behind him hesitated, as if something had changed in the air. The center slot then began to glow, faintly at first, then brighter, and something ignited in the air above the pedestal. A fire, small but fierce, burning in mid-air with no fuel, just flame erupting from nothing and spreading outward in a brilliant arc that swept across the void like a curtain being pulled shut. The wave of illusions hit the wall of fire and shattered. every glow, every promise, every beautiful lie that scattered and faded. And behind the fire, where the tide had been, there was only darkness again. Christopher looked at the floating flame and took a deep breath. Then he reached up and took the flame. It was warm but not burning, gentle but with a feel of fierce energy inside. Christopher grabbed the flame and then pressed it into the center slot. The moment the flame clicked into place, the world cracked open, like an egg cracks when something inside is ready to be born. A wind rushed through the void, a great exhalation, as if the darkness itself was being breathed out. The void dissolved like ink in water, like fog in sunlight, and behind it, spreading outward from the pedestal in every direction, color returned. A sky appeared overhead, vast and blue. Luminous raindrops fell from the sky, and as they touched the ground, all sorts of colors bloomed. Gold, silver, violet, rose, emerald. The black and white world was quickly transforming into a bright and vivid view. Christopher stood beside the pedestal and looked at the world around him changing, with tears on his face. Footsteps, familiar ones, unhurried. Orion showed himself beside Christopher, watching the rain fall over the newly colored world, with something in his expression that looked like relief and pride. The fire of the dark forest, he said quietly. You find it. Christopher nodded, turned his head to meet Orion's eyes. Orion smiled. You are confident enough to know and to pursue what you want in life, refusing to settle. Orion paused a bit, and his voice carried a weight that felt older than mountains. That's how you find the last artifact, but you didn't just find the last artifact. You completed the set. And the set together breaks the spell that's been holding everything in despair. The rain softened a mist, and the world around them hummed with color and warmth. And Orion turned to Christopher with a question in his eyes. You could stay, you know. Leave all of it behind. The late nights, the pressure, the weight you carry every day. Stay here, where the sky is always this blue and nothing asks you to be anything you aren't. Christopher looked at the world around him. The green trees, the luminous rain, the quiet peace of a place where nothing hurt and nothing demanded. He felt the pull of it, the same pull he had felt from every illusion, except this one was real. Eventually, Christopher shook his head and spoke with a clear voice. I can't stay here. The world I came from hasn't changed, but I have. And that's the point, isn't it? Not to escape, but to face the problems directly this time. Orion watched him for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he smiled and nodded, unhurried. Then the door of opportunity is all yours. Orion pointed to the side, and there it was. Rusty, metal, standing in the mist like it had been waiting all along. The real door of opportunity. Christopher gave a warm and tight hug to Orion. Then he walked toward the door and stopped in front of it. He smiled back at Orion. Thank you, Orion. This is quite a journey. Orion nodded, with warm light in his eyes. Walk well, Pathfinder. Christopher turned around and stepped through. Views quickly changed and wrapped around him. And then he was back to where it all started. The same old tiles, the same flickering lights, the same distant rumble of a train moving through the tunnels somewhere beneath the city. Christopher stood there for a moment, just breathing, letting the familiar sounds wash over him. He walked toward the exit, tilted his head back, let the rain fall on his face, and walked into the night. He reached up and touched his chest, where the weight used to live. That dense, crushing pressure that had been sitting on him for as long as he could remember. The one that made every morning feel like lifting a boulder just to get out of bed. It was gone. That's the end of this series. Good night, my fellow traveler. I will see you soon on our next adventure.